The game between Georgia and Alabama deserves to be favored. Alabama and Georgia are set to meet in the national championship on Monday. Despite what happened in the SEC championship game, Georgia is a 3-point betting favorite. Does that make sense? And what information can bettors take from that first game? Alabama's SEC title game win. What went right? The SEC championship game went about as well as Alabama could have hoped. But if you had to narrow it down to one thing, the fact that Georgia didn't sack Bryce Young is probably the winner. The Georgia defense usually doesn't need to take risks. The Bulldogs didn't seem to blitz consistently until Alabama's second drive of the third quarter, which was probably a mistake. Georgia's secondary is beatable, but the otherworldly strength of the front seven disguises that fact in most every game. You can't run on Georgia's defense. It's also hard to drive the length of the field. Since Georgia didn't get enough pressure on Young, he and speedster Jameson Williams had enough time to operate. Throw in a few coverage busts and Williams scored on receptions of 67 and 55 yards. Alabama converted 7 of 14 third downs. Young scrambled 3 times for 40 yards. Jordan Davis and some of Georgia's larger defensive linemen appeared tired as Alabama mounted scoring drives of 12, 9 and 12 plays. Playing from behind in the second half, Stetson Bennett attempted 48 passes excluding 3 sacks. Had attempted more than 20 passes just once in his last 15 games. Georgia wants to run the football way more often than it throws. The pass-heavy approach helped to tire out the Bulldogs' defense. It also allowed Alabama's pass rush to get aggressive. Bennett threw 2 interceptions, including one that Alabama returned for a touchdown. Straying from its traditional game script also put the Bulldogs into some unfamiliar territory on third down, leading to 3 conversions in 12 attempts. Despite all that, Georgia had the ball in Alabama territory with 7:24 left in the game with a chance to cut the deficit to a touchdown. Alabama vs. Georgia, Part 2, What will change? Alabama recently beat Georgia by 17. Since 2008, the Tide are stunningly good as an underdog. It's easy to build a narrative that favors the Tide, but there's no room for emotion and storytelling in betting. If you want to be profitable, it's important to put that aside and evaluate how much of the first meeting is repeatable. It's possible that Georgia's vaunted defense will fail to sack Young again, give up 2 touchdown passes of at least 55 yards, give up a defensive touchdown and finish with a -2 turnover margin, but it's extremely unlikely. Georgia started playing more over-the-top coverage on Williams when John Metchie III went down. I'd expect the Bulldogs to be a little more aggressive, or at least more creative, in pressuring Young. Senior safety Christopher Smith seems healthier than he was in the SEC title game. Even before examining Alabama's offensive line, Georgia can make it a much different game by eliminating coverage busts on the back end of the defense. Alabama's offensive line has gotten better results since making a lineup switch before playing Georgia in December. However, 2 of the 5 starters from that outing, Ekiyor Jr. and Chris Owens, were out due to injury at the end of the Cincinnati game. Their status was unclear as of Friday morning. Replacing Ekiyor Jr. shouldn't be a problem. J.C. Latham is Alabama's 5th best senior of the recruiting era according to the 247 Sports Composite, right behind Bryce Young and Julio Jones. Against Cincinnati, Pro Football Focus graded Latham as the team's best lineman in pass protection, slightly ahead of projected NFL first-round pick Evan Neal, and as the team's best run blocker. Ekiyor Jr. has played nearly 2,000 snaps for his career as opposed to just 141 for Latham. But so far, Latham has graded as a better run blocker than Ekiyor Jr. in any of his seasons at Alabama according to PFF. Owens has been mediocre in terms of individual grades for most of his Alabama career, but the Tide offensive line was effective with him at right tackle last season and again this postseason. That's the bigger area of concern for the Tide offensive line. A healthier, more rested Brian Robinson and potentially a better run-blocking offensive line than Alabama featured in the first meeting may help the Tide to better rushing numbers, but it's a challenge to run with success against this Bulldogs front. Switching sides of the football, Josh Jobe played in the first game. It seems unlikely that he'll play this time. That's a downgrade for Alabama. Entering the SEC title game, George Pickens had played just 7 snaps since his ACL injury, has had more than 1 month and 2 other games to progress. Georgia left tackle Jamari Salio missed the last 4 games of the regular season due to injury. Has also had time to shake off the rust. He played well against Michigan pass rushers Aiden Hutchinson and David Ohabo. College football playoff, what will matter? To narrow the focus, here are the 4 things that I think will determine the outcome of this game. Final analysis. The last meeting between these teams produced 65 points. I don't expect that scoring output again. My favorite bet is the full game under. I also lean to Georgia -3. There's probably value on the Bulldogs due to a combination of shifting market perception and some of the unsustainable things that happened in December. As a bettor, realize the hay is in the barn for this season. Don't overextend yourself chasing your losses or trying to add zeros to your profits. I won't wager a large amount of money on the final game of the season just because it's the last opportunity. It's fine to put some entertainment dollars on the game, but don't feel the need to bet it at all. Christopher Smith specializes in handicapping college football and basketball. He founded Sports Locksmith to share his analysis.